ist wirklich wie so ein Ritter auf einem Feuerball.
Great cars, great drivers, great rallies. So we could say it was a golden age of rallying.
All the colors of life, the darkest, the murkiest colors and the most bright colors, the best victories. And people recall those now, 30 years later. Well, that proves which incredible period that was.
It was best time in my life.
I think overall the car was going quite well, and it was not that bad as people now think about.
For a professional driver, more power you have in the car, more fun you get.
It was not for the boys, it was for the men.
Man kann nur immer wieder sagen, ich danke dem Herrgott, dass ich da dabei war. Ich habe das immer wieder, wenn ich gefragt werde zum Rallye-Sport von heute, sage ich, ja, die fahren, aber ich bin froh, dass ich es zur richtigen Zeit gemacht habe.
Group B. The mid-1980s saw this exhilarating rally class mobilize a worldwide audience of millions. And even today, motorsports fans' passion for this era lives on. But those wild, uninhibited years were anything but pure bliss, especially considering the drivers and spectators who would lose their lives. This film doesn't gloss over Group B's dark side, but it does show a whole lot of what made it so irresistible and so irreplaceable.
I feel so good.
Group B is you know, in a very special time in rally.
It was the most popular moment of rally sport because the cars were very powerful, were fantastic to drive. In that time, they were dream cars.
Well, you know, it was progress also. You know, the first Group B cars were not so much better what we used to have.
They were very good cars. They were, let's say, physically very much harder to drive than anything else.
And what was possible to do during this period would not be possible anymore. You know, now, I mean, easily the teams, the drivers, the co-drivers, they complain if it's too much night driving. You must accept the evolution.
When the Group B class got up and running in 1983, Audi had already spent 2 years wowing the scene with all-wheel drive and turbochargers. The competition's answers to all this were still on the drawing board. The Quattro was a whole new dimension.
It was a fantastic car to drive, you know, and very steady, and power came on a little bit earlier what it used to, you know. So I think that was maybe the best car we had.
It was a fun car to watch as well, and the sound from the car was incredible. People still talk about it, so they want to see them again.
Advancement through technology. To this day, it's Audi's most memorable slogan. And as its competition stiffened, the original Quattro's all-wheel drive was to undergo significant improvement. Red-hot turbochargers, on the other hand, would become the Achilles heel of Group B.
Der Turbolader und der Tank 50 Zentimeter auseinander ist es gefährlicher, wenn der Lader 3 Meter vom Tank entfernt ist.
Then was the fire. That was the main problem.
You know, 30 years ago, I don't remember well, but nobody thinking safety.
Yes.
Like today.
Yes.
We are flat out and we are in, if everything goes well, fantastic.
True, yeah.
And now is, you know, also for me, safety is most important. But our time, you know, in flat out and we will see.
On loose road surfaces, the Quattros taught their rear-wheel drive competition the deeper meaning of the word traction. This even held true for such a wonderful racing machine as the Lancia 037.
Well, 037 is beautiful car in tarmac and not 4x4 in gravel, and that means we are a little bit, you know, in handicap with Audi or Peugeot.
I think that was the fastest two-wheel drive cars ever built.
The 037's biggest fan was Walter Röhrl.
Das Auto wiegt 960 Kilo. Davon kann man heute nur noch träumen. Getriebe hinten liegend, mit ganz schnellen Möglichkeiten die Übersetzung zu wechseln, auch das Getriebe zu wechseln. Ich erinnere mich, ich habe einmal einen Getriebewechsel gehabt, 8 Minuten. In 8 Minuten ist das Getriebe gewechselt. Und das war überhaupt die Philosophie der Italiener. Die sagten, wir mussten ein Auto bauen, wo wir Dinge ganz schnell wechseln können. Die Deutschen haben gesagt, wir bauen ein Auto, wo nichts kaputt geht. Dann ist trotzdem was kaputt gegangen, dann haben sie Stunden gebraucht zum Getriebewechseln. Also das war der Unterschied.
Okay, we make a race car, which was the concept of the Stratos, the same concept, mid-engine, transversal, a very light performing car. And in fact, with this 037, we managed to win the World Championship.
Dieses Auto war natürlich das perfekte Auto für meinen Fahrstil. Ich bin einer, der also natürlich am liebsten gar nicht gelenkt hätte. Das war mir das Allerliebste gewesen und das Auto war, so viel hat gereicht. Da ist es exakt dorthin gefahren, wo es hinfahren sollte. Obgleich natürlich, wie ich damals unterschrieben habe, alle mich gesagt haben, spinnst du, das ist so ein gefährliches Auto, hast du mal gesehen, diese dünnen Wasserröhrl da vorne nach vorne. Wenn du da anfährst, sage ich, ja, ich habe ja nicht vor, dass ich anfahre, also warum soll ich das Auto nicht fahren? Also das war global gesehen meine schönste Saison in meiner Karriere.
I'm glad that he said this, because we always appreciate a lot Walter, and it's nice to listen a driver that even 20 years after he said, this was the best team I've been.
The 1983 season opened in Monte Carlo as usual, with Walter Röhrl driving for Lancia, along with Jean-Claude Androuet and Marco Alain. Audi had the Frenchwoman Michèle Mouton, Finland's Hannu Mikkola and the Swede Stig Blomqvist on board. Opel was relying on Henri Toivonen and Ari Vatanen, Nissan on Timo Salonen, and Renault with its R5 Turbo on Jean Ragnotti. Audi, Lancia, Opel, Renault, Nissan, and Porsche, the pioneers of Group B. Conditions at this Monte were largely dry, so Lancia and Walter Röhrl could employ their virtues to best advantage. Traction wasn't a factor here at all, so Walter Röhrl and Christian Geisdorfer could celebrate their third Monte Carlo victory, and with their Lancia 037, they won in the first ever Group B event as well. Before long, intriguing and exotic creations joined the fray alongside the factory teams, like the BMW M1 with its 430 horsepower six-cylinder engine. Or the Ferrari 308, 310 horsepower from 8 cylinders and plenty of potential to conquer Italian hearts by storm. Porsche contented itself with homologating the 911 model for private entries. Citroën tried to get a foot in the Group B door with its Visa 4x4, and later on with the BX4TC. There were beautiful Group B cars that were quite similar to their production cousins, like the Alfa GTV, and there were some less excellent ones, like a privately owned Peugeot 504 pickup, the African contribution to Group B, so to speak. This vehicle made its appearance at the Safari and Bandama rallies, and it stood for how, in the beginning, anything that had wheels had to and did get homologated. Otherwise, the starting lineups would have been ridiculously thin.
Auch Lada hat ein Gruppe B-Auto gemacht, was natürlich optisch einmal ein wunderbarer Aufputz war. Von der Leistung her war die Lada nicht viel stärker, wie was eine normale war. Ne? Aber optisch hat es halt was hergegeben. Und mein Auto, was ich mir selber gebaut habe, mein erstes, habe ich sogar, weil da hat es von Lada noch nicht einmal die Verbreiterungen gegeben, habe ich sogar von mir Fiorio die Verbreiterungen genommen und habe es umgestrickt auf mein Auto. Und vor allem, ich muss selber ein Auto, ein Gruppe B-Auto bauen können. Ne? Das geht ja heute alles nicht mehr.
Mid-1983 saw Opel replace its Ascona 400 with the sportier Manta. Opel's drivers were nothing to sneeze at, either. Finland's Ari Vatanen and Henri Toivonen. Team manager was Englishman Tony Fall, who was also in charge of monitoring the competition's homologation. In 1983, Toyota and Opel turned up with rear-wheel drive cars, even though it had already become clear that all-wheel drive was the new name of the game. Juha Kankkunen and Bjorn Valdegaard drove for Toyota Team Europe, managed by Ove Andersson. The Toyota Celica's drift angles were a beautiful sight indeed, as were those of the Nissan 240 RS. But models based on the old concept of motor in front, drive wheels in back, were in most respects hopelessly inferior, not only to the Audi Quattro, but also to the R5 Turbo and the Lancia Rally. Even on gravel, Audi proceeded to win some and lose some against Lancia. The Quattro was just too unreliable for Hanno Mikkola's World Championship ambitions. All too often, Audi's magic bullets had to be towed off the course. One Group B World Championship record that will probably never be bested was set by Audi in Argentina. Stig Blomqvist drove the best time in the first special stage, averaging 189 kilometers per hour. Hanno Mikkola and Arne Hertz won in Argentina. The Flying Finns hard at work back home. Best of show. The Opel Manta 400 with Ari Vatanen and Henri Toivonen on the accelerator. One reason for the 1983 World Championship constellation was Walter Röhrl's contractually guaranteed wish to drive no more than 6 rallies. But there was no Lancia team order favouring Marco Anna. So at the San Remo rally, when Röhrl, who was in the lead, had his compressor go bad, the result was an intriguing scenario.
You know, everybody won't be ahead. That's the problem, is everybody go like hell.
Röhrl lost over 6 minutes and then tried furiously to catch up, but struggled with the dust from slower competitors. So co-driver Geisdorfer came up with a creative solution. Christian, at the beginning of a special stage, frantically told the start official that they had a disconnected seatbelt. After that problem had been solved, Röhrl's way forward was dust-free. Röhrl drove 33 of 58 possible best times, and going into the final night, he was only a hair's breadth behind Marco Alain. But team head Fiorio saw through Geistdorfer's trick and saw to it personally that his Bavarian stars got a time penalty.
I don't remember this.
The jumble of curves in the Ligurian mountains. Here we see the ascent to the village of Baiado. In the final asphalt stages near San Remo, Röhrl put on another tour de force so that everyone would know just who was the master. But then, at his team manager's behest, Röhrl backed down and victory belonged to Marco Alain. Once again, Audi walked away empty-handed, allowing Lancia to win the 1983's Constructors Title ahead of time and with its home audience present.
Für uns das erfolgreichste Jahr, obwohl wir nicht Weltmeister wurden. Ja. Aber wir hätten in dem Jahr 6 Rallyes gewinnen müssen. Ja. Und am Schluss sind wir halt da als Vize-Weltmeister da gestanden. Aber es war trotzdem für mich die faszinierendste Saison überhaupt.
The Bendama Rally was won by Bjorn Waldegard. This was Toyota's first Group B win. But Stig Blomqvist, with his victory in the RAC Rally, still managed to end Audi's year on a happy note, while teammate Hanno Mikkola, with 4 season victories, became Group B's first world champion driver.
In any case, you got your name on the list, you know. But in our case, and even more if we take somebody like Rauno Aaltonen and Mäkinen, they won a lot of rallies, but they were not called world champions. It was nice.
The 1980s saw worldwide interest in rallying skyrocket. Those who had always loved the sport were joined by hordes of new fans. All of them wanted to experience the taming of these tough-to-drive beasts live out there in the wild. At first, rallying's newfound popularity was something everyone was happy about. But before long, event organisers started being overwhelmed by the enormous number of fans. And their attempts to corral the enthusiastic masses in a more or less safe way were, to put it mildly, quite individual. So the completely over-the-top circus act proceeded to run its course.
In a way, in this crazy way, you have to see it in the context of that time. I like that demonstration of emotions, because they literally wanted to touch the car, because they loved it. Of course, they themselves were the danger to our sport, but at the same time, they were danger because they loved the sport so much.
The intensity of the images from those heady days really can give one goosebumps. But among die-hard Portuguese, French or even Italian fans, it would have been seen as a sign of cowardice or even disinterest to leave the course at any second but the very last. And they had no qualms about risking injury.
C'est un très gros problème en rallye parce que le spectateur veut vivre avec le pilote le rallye et être le plus près possible sur la route. Et donc, il est tout le temps le plus près possible des bords de la route. Et quand on arrive à des allures si folles, la première impression, c'est mais ces gens sont fous. vous pensez simplement que ce sont des personnes humaines et vous êtes obligé de faire attention. La deuxième fois, vous essayez de dire mais ils sont encore là. La troisième fois, vous essayez d'oublier qu'ils sont là et d'essayer de dire bon, ils vont être là pendant tout le rallye. Si je veux aller vite, si je veux gagner, il faut que j'aille encore plus vite et je suis obligé de les oublier. Et pour les oublier, il faut simplement essayer d'imaginer peut-être que ce sont des arbres, ce sont un mur de chaque côté. Mais c'est quand même pas facile d'oublier que des personnes humaines sont comme des arbres parce que ce n'est pas la même chose quand même.
Famous Zambon-la-Froid. Just at the end of it, I could go a little bit wide, but there's no ditch, it's just a flat ground, and people were just standing there when the road stops, but it's flat ground, and they were standing there, and I start, well, back and starts hitting the cars, and then, a couple of people, they go over the windscreen, and you feel inside that, now they must be dead now, and luckily, finally, only one guy broke his leg, and actually he came now 3 years ago. I saw him. This gentleman came in a Trofeo and Ross ice race. He came to see, well, Ari, I'm the guy. Who broke his? So you broke my leg. I'm so proud that Ari Vatanen has broken my leg.
Die Fahrbarkeit des Autos, dass das perfekt ist, das hat mich mehr beschäftigt wie die Zuschauer. Ganz bestimmt. Also da habe ich mehr investiert, da immer weiter mich zu entwickeln und noch das perfekter zu machen, wie die Zuschauer, die waren da und die sind gestern gesprungen, dann werden sie heute auch springen. Aus und basta.
For those in the cockpits, the roadside crazes initially caused little worry.
Ja, beängstigend war dann die Zeit mit dem S1. Jetzt weniger wegen der enormen Leistung, die wir in den Autos hatten, sondern der Enthusiasmus der Zuschauer, der ja einfach den Rallye-Sport erdrückt hat. Und es war natürlich auch dann die Zeit, wo eben gerade mit dem S1 bei der Sanremo die Geräuschkulisse die Leute in den ersten 2-3 Tagen völlig erstarren hat lassen. Und wie das Geschwür da nach vorne geschossen ist, da hast du gemerkt, die Leute mussten sich erst darauf einstellen. Das ist dann jeden Tag besser geworden. Aber am Anfang war das der Albtraum.
The presentation of Audi's new team in the French Maritime Alps. Walter Röhrl goes back to driving school on all-wheel drive. His new teammates, Michèle Mouton, Hanno Mikkola and Stig Blomqvist were piloting the restyle Quattros alongside him. It's an extremely snowy affair in Ardèche and the Maritime Alps, and the ideal playground for the Quattro drivetrain. Following an ultra-short learning period, Röhrl and Blomqvist are tossing best times back and forth, leaving their conventional competition in the dust. This crazy match between Röhrl and Blomqvist electrifies the entire Audi team, who politely overlook minor fender benders. For this duel, Hanno Mikkola is on the sidelines. In the end, Walter Röhrl manages to vanquish the great Stig Blomqvist in the snow. Not bad for a student driver, one might say. At the port of Monte Carlo, Audi celebrates a triple victory, with Walter Röhrl and Christian Geistdörfer enjoying their 4th win at this classic event.
Dieses Fahren mit dem Quattro habe ich natürlich auch lernen müssen. Ich war aber eben nie der große Freund von dieser brutalen Anstellerei, damit der Gegenpendler dann passt. Das kann man aber nicht beschreiben. Das ist einfach dieses gewisse Gefühl, das hast oder hast nicht.
Group B's second year as well started with no new models, so Lancia and Audi stayed together at the top. with Toyota, Nissan and Renault managing only infrequent highlights in the sprint rallies. A nail-biting duel between Hanno Mikkola and Marco Helén was the centrepiece of the Portugal Rally. Helén, in the magnificent 037, kept up astoundingly well on gravel. In the warm nest of the Lancia team, the Finnish driver delivers a striking performance. For Audi, things are rather rough in Portugal, with only 2 of their 3 cars remaining in the race. Mikkola leads, while Röhrl loses tons of time due to technical problems and a rollover accident.
Vor dem Hanno gefahren, dann nach 200 Meter stehen bleiben und haben ihn vorbeilassen.
The duel at the top got crazier and crazier, requiring near impossible extremes of concentration, with Mikkola repeatedly having to battle the dust from the Lancia. The Italians also provided Helén with split times, especially on really long special stages like Arganil. The dust problem got particularly bad during the nighttime special stages, so Röhrl and his co-driver reached into the well-filled bag of tricks for driving dust-free that they'd gathered at Lancia. They booked into controls before Mikkola so that they started before him, and after 200 or 300 meters, Röhrl stopped and let Hanno drive by, giving him a dust-free ride. Lancia team head Fiorio raged when he caught on to this, but it was already too late. In the next-to-last special stage, the Italians struck back. Bittiger and Bession pulled over shortly after starting, letting Marco put the pedal to the metal with a clear view. But it was all in vain. The winners in Portugal, Hanno Mikkola and Arne Hertz in the Audi Quattro, ahead of Helén and Ilkka Kivimäki in the Lancia. The long-awaited Peugeot premiere in Corsica. This brand new Group B car came from the Sochaux factory near Paris, and it represented the first truly new Group B car design, with a rear mid-engine layout, an all-wheel drive, a rear subframe and a sheet metal monocoque construction.
Peugeot 205 was like that. It lifted me to another level. It was so easy. You know, you could be incredible speed and sideways, and the front wheels were nearly straight, and you would, literally hold the steering wheel with 4 fingers, 4 fingers, and you were smiling.
Audi reacted to this new challenge with a shortened version of its A2, the so-called Sport Quattro. The centerpiece of this new car was the familiar 5-cylinder engine, but with 4 valve-cylinder heads, and with that, Group B's race for even higher performance was on.
I think in that time you haven't been complaining at all, really, because you always wanted to have more power.
Die PS-Zahl ist für einen Rallyewagen nicht so wichtig. Viel wichtiger ist das Drehmoment. Ein Formel-1-Wagen hat ca. 30 Meter Kilopond, wir haben jetzt ungefähr das Doppelte. Das heißt, unsere Motoren sind so ausgelegt, dass wir sehr schnell beschleunigen können aus den Kurven heraus. Und da, glaube ich, schlagen wir jetzt schon die Formel 1.
Audi ist ja angetreten unter der Prämisse, mit dem Konzept Weltmeisterschaftsläufe zu fahren, was wir jeden Tag damals schon viele 100 Mal auf der Straße verkauft haben. Das heißt Frontmotor. Und das gibt eine Achslastverteilung, die halt nicht besser und nicht schlechter ist, als wie sie zum Beispiel ein Porsche bis zum heutigen Tag auch hat.
I think the best for Audi has been to put all the new technology with a new engine, with the 4-valve engine and everything in the long Quattro, because then we had a good base to start with, and we had a really good engine who was coming for the Sport Quattro. But they decided to do a completely new car.
The new Sport Quattro, like its predecessor, was designed under the aegis of Ferdinand Piëch, who was unperturbed by criticism of its driving behaviour. In order to teach this new shortened model better manners, Dr. Piëch paid personal visits to the service team at several rallies. This short model's premiere in Corsica was lacklustre, but its new engine sound was a feast for the ears right from the start. Mazda's RX-7 was another new design that enriched the scene, its rotary engine adding yet another sound to the already diverse motor music. Achim Bambold headed the project and also drove himself. The ever more extreme cars and the physical strength needed to push them to their limits, the sheer length of the events, the special stages, and the heat and dust in the cockpit, all this required caring and healing hands. So doctors and psychotherapists had long since become fixtures of the rally retinues. Some drivers had their own ways of kicking back and relaxing. And when the many aches and pains of the constantly abused cars held things back, it paid off to maintain a calm and sunny demeanor.
Jetzt haben wir einen Bremssattel weggerissen und Bremsscheiben. Da hat natürlich dahinter alles blockiert. Ne? Da bin ich also erstmal schon beinahe mal richtig rausgeflogen. Und dann beim nächsten Abzweig hat alles blockiert. Dann bin ich gestanden und habe noch 100 Meter bis zum Ziel gehabt. Dann bin ich so mit dem ersten Gang mit Gewalt habe ich mich noch bis zum Ziel geschleppt. Ne?
Trotzdem aber schnellster.
Ja, das kann ich gar nicht verstehen. Gell?
In the land of 1,000 lakes, our Peugeot and Ari Vatanen had arrived. In what was only its third event, the new Peugeot 205 T16 managed its first victory. Nowhere did the crazy Group B show combine better with the landscape, the wonderful autumn light, and the fans' joyful insanity than at the San Remo Rally. This Italian journey turned into a nail-biting duel between Ari Vatanen and Walter Röhrl, who had to squeeze every last drop of performance out of his nervous Sport Quattro to keep up. Ari Vatanen won 31 of 54 special stages, but even so, Röhrl stayed within striking distance of the Peugeot driver right up to the asphalt stages of the final night. It rained cats and dogs that night, and most of the drivers pushed for the show to be cancelled. But this didn't happen, and the precarious manoeuvring on those mountain roads made slick by the wet autumn leaves could go on.
I just have aquaplaning everywhere. Too much water for us.
It looks like we have to speed up a little bit.
On one of the few fast sections, Röhrl, doing 160, started aquaplaning like wild, hit the embankment, and flipped over several times. But Vatanen's luck held here. He spun around several times and went on to celebrate Peugeot's second victory the next morning. By this time, all the rear-wheel drive Group B participants could enjoy were minor successes, whenever the all-wheel drive cars were beset by temporary technical difficulties. The Opel factory team had already completely withdrawn its magnificent Manta 400, but masters like Juha Kankkonen, Björn Valdegard, Timo Salonen and Sheikha Mehta still offered a memorable fishtailing show. And after all, drifts like that had already helped rallying achieve a steady rise in popularity during the Group 4 years. Audi dominated the 1984 season and managed a huge double victory among the constructors, and also in the Drivers' World Championship thanks to Stig Blomqvist. But Blomqvist's success with the Sport Quattro in the Bandama Rally would remain the only success of an all-wheel drive Group B car in Africa.
First Group B car was Toyota Celica rear-wheel drive turbo, which one was very strong in Africa.
Amidst the wildlife of the savannah, the wild animals from Europe felt more than a bit uneasy. The high-tech machines of Group B were to have almost no success in Africa. This just wasn't their world. But with all means at their disposal, the constructors had grown somewhat arrogant by now and attempted to subdue the Safari Rally. Helicopters became a key element in the top team's service networks, allowing responsible engineers and team heads to be personally on hand at every service point. Kenya and the Ivory Coast. These were places where Nissan and Opels could shine. But above all, this was Toyota country. When the cars got beaten to a pulp by tracks through the bush, the ability to replace rear axles and other parts quickly often counted more than speed on the course itself. And that gave the simpler but more robust rear-wheel drive cars a clear advantage. Even the Quattro's technology got strained to the limit. An Audi gearbox replacement out in the bush. The necessary people have been flown in along with the new gearbox. The massive challenge posed by Africa was answered with a technical and human invasion of seldom seen proportions. And the contrast between the technological battle and the region's simple huts, where not even a naked light bulb hung from the ceiling, bordered on the obnoxious. In Africa, as elsewhere, Group B would occasionally turn into a dangerous test of speed. On public, unclosed roads, for example, the Audi Quattro could go up to 240 kilometers per hour, which it sometimes did. It had to, in fact, because organizers reacted to the factory team's high-tech onslaught rather helplessly by calling for ridiculous average speeds. In 1983, Ari Vatanen won the Safari in the Opel Ascona 400, and 1984 saw Stig Blomqvist win for Audi in the Bandama Rally. But all the other African victories of the Group B years went to the Toyota drivers Bjorn Valdegaard and Juha Kankkunen. The third Group B season begins. For most of the top drivers, the most intense experience season after season is the rally in Monte Carlo.
My Monte Carlo 85, maybe that's incredible. 8-minute penalty. In the beginning of the rally, after a few stages, I said to Terry Harriman, because after all, I was against Walter Röhrl, who was the maestro of Monte Carlo. And in Bourget, which was, I think, 50 kilometers long, had bergla, had snow, had ice, tarmac, everything, all the combinations. And I made no mistakes for 50 kilometers. And perfect performance, I thought. I come to the end, I see I was 6 seconds slower than Walter for 50 kilometers. It's not much for 50 kilometers, but for me it was, because it was a third or fourth stage that I was slower than him, only by a few seconds on each stage. I said to Terry Harriman, no, Walter will win his 5th Monte Carlo now, because he had already won 4. He's just a master here. And then on the following stage, I found some new tires, which just lifted me to another level altogether. And then finally, we won that rally.
It's once again an intense duel between Walter Röhrl and Ari Vatanen on very mixed surfaces. The driving prowess on display here was nothing short of incredible. And in Röhrl's case, it was with a very nose-heavy car that held no great love for cornering. The deciding factor is usually making the right decision on tires.
Some left-hand corners.
Yes. No, you're not going to be any better than a slick tire on the snow with a rain tire.
Röhrl chooses wrong. His slicks starve him for traction on the uphills, and he ultimately loses a victory that he hadn't wanted hard enough anyway. So Ari Vatanen and Peugeot are the clear winning combination here. The Lancia drivers still have to make do with their venerable 037, since the company is far behind in developing an all-wheel drive car. In mixed conditions, uphill ice followed by asphalt, the Italians even resort to quick tyre changes in order to compensate as much as possible for their traction handicap.
Nobody understanding in Fiat Group. Fiat Group won't or no in follow, after 037 to S4, and we are delayed homologated 6-7 mount, and that means Peugeot and Audi is going, in far away.
Lancia's new Delta S4 has been in the works for a long time, and its first test drives are in the autumn of 1984. This new weapon is based on a smart technological concept, but it takes time to mold the individual components into a well-tuned orchestra.
When I started to develop the car, the S4, because I was tester driver also, the car was very nervous, and we had to do so many days working and developing the car.
After the Stratus and the 037, Lancia had high expectations of team head Cesare Fiorio and his engineers with their Delta S4. And it turned out to be perhaps the most uncompromising Group B car. A paper-thin Kevlar shell was stretched over an extremely light tubular space frame. The 1.8-litre rear mid-engine was supercharged and turbocharged, and it transferred its 500 horses to the road with variable configuration all-wheel drive.
The car was at the real beginning of his development, because it was a car that should have a normal life of 3-4 seasons. We had only 1 season.
Portugal, probably one of those events that made Group B so popular, a battle between the world's best that included some very imperfect cars. What's more, maintenance was done in the most public possible way.
Via questa macchina, porco Dio, vai indietro, bastardo!
But it was easy to get queasy watching the drivers perform their artistry between densely packed columns of spectators. Next stop, the Mediterranean island of Corsica, and the escalation continues apace. Renault sends a newly evolved R5 Turbo for the first time, and John Ragnotti drives it to victory in its first appearance. Peugeot, forced to follow suit, arrives in Corsica with its new Evo 2, driven by Bruno Zabi. The driver's demands for more performance have been heard.
The power has increased, but braking has increased, road holding has increased, and our driver feels they don't have enough power, so we must work to get more.
It was fantastic, and the car was so nice to drive. A lot of power, and first gear, and you push the throttle down. You felt immediately that this is different life.
In 1985, the Italian Attilio Bittiga from the Lancia team was under serious pressure. On asphalt at least, he absolutely had to perform well, and he ended up overdoing it. In a fast right-hand curve, his 037 ran off the road and its aluminium roll cage broke, killing Betteke on the spot. Co-driver Peresino survived uninjured. It was only later that FIA would begin requiring steel cages. Betteke's death was just the first calamity of the Group B era. The next followed just a few weeks later in Argentina. This time, the victims were Ari Vatanen and Peugeot.
The only downside in the behavior of 205 was the certain kind of dip. If the back end hit at the opposite end of the dip, I mean, it launched the back end up, and there's nothing you could do. It is about the weight distribution, and anyway, so there was a dip, something which wasn't there during the recce, and so that just launched the car end over end, and my seat broke, and I didn't have a clutch belt, and so all my massive injuries because I was not held anymore, and it was nothing. It was an absolute straight piece of road. It must have been at least 180, and then just end over end. So I'm very extremely lucky to be here today.
At this Argentinian rally, Audi took its Sport Quattro to a new, much-needed evolutionary level with its spectacular S1.
Aus der Not geboren würde ich es nicht nennen, der S1, sondern das war einfach nur ein konsequentes Ausreizen des Themas, dass man gesagt hat, wir brauchen eine bessere Achslastverteilung, wir wollen die Aerodynamik dazu machen, und was uns noch gar nicht gefällt, ist die Sperren, wie man diese 4 Räder miteinander verbindet.
The new Audi was a milestone in every respect, but this winged car literally fell apart, taking paddles and forwards at high speed in an early special stage. Its power and aerodynamics may have been just right, but its new Kevlar parts were no match for the water.
We was very happy to get that car, and it was good fun to drive it, that's for sure.
Diese Werte, wie das Auto beschleunigt hat, da haben wir dann Messungen gemacht, von, was weiß ich, nach 36 Meter bis 100 gefahren, auf Schotter von 0 auf 160 in 6,9 Sekunden und solche Dinge. Und das war einfach ein tolles Gefühl.
In 1985, Timo Salonen transferred from Nissan to Peugeot. And this move to a new car kicked off a successful year for Timo Salonen and his co-driver Seppo Harjanne. Following the Portugal Rally, the two won in Greece, New Zealand, Argentina and Finland. 4 victories in a row, enough to win them the World Championship title. Salonen was doubtless one of the great exceptional talents, though his fitness was always a matter of public doubt. The Finnish driver, along with his co-driver Harjanne, was a dyed-in-the-wool chain smoker.
I don't smoke anymore because I don't need vitamin, because I'm not making rallies anymore.
Perhaps as a way of saying thanks for his great performance, the mechanics furnished his Peugeot with everything a smoker might wish for.
You know, it was Sanremo rally car, and I wait in the mountains in one restaurant, and they bring the proper rally car just to test that everything is okay. And when they came in the restaurant to tell Timo car is ready, front of the door, they were smiling a little bit, and I think something funny is coming, and there was ashtray and matches and Marlboro.
It was in Finland that the future of Group B began to really take shape. The speeds driven there sometimes went beyond what even world-class drivers could imagine.
I drove 30 years, and I had only once that kind of feeling that I'm not sitting in the car, that I'm watching it somewhere out, you know, sometimes, and that was on the Oninpoi. A few times I had a feeling that I'm just watching where it's going, you know. So. But it's very difficult also find the limit, because faster you go, the more push it gets it gets down, you know, and better grip you get.
Das konnte man sich als Rallyefahrer damals nicht vorstellen. Einfach, dass man Downforce kriegt, also dass man Anpressdruck kriegt und damit plötzlich auch am Schotter schneller fahren kann, als wie normal die Physik, die man im Kopf hat.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the Rally of Thousand Lakes, Remo
So that was the best moment when I finished 85,000 Lakes Rally, and I won the rally, and that year I was already sure world champion.
Audi turned up at the San Remo rally with a much improved S1.
Man hat die Achslastverteilung verbessert, indem man alles, was vorne so den Motor rum war und nicht unbedingt vorne sein musste, nach hinten gepackt hat. Kühlung, Lichtmaschine. Und man hat Aerodynamik gemacht mit dem Heckflügel, soweit das Reglement das hergegeben hat. Man hat Aerodynamik aber auch vor allen Dingen am Vorderwagen gemacht, mit so einer Art Schürzen, Leitblechen an den vorderen Kotflügeln, Entlüftung nach oben, anstatt durch die Radhäuser. Das heißt, wir haben die Aerodynamik verbessert und ein wesentlicher Schritt war damals die Einführung des Torsen-Differentials, wie es ja bis zum heutigen Tag in jedem Quattro verwendet wird.
But with the car's new aerodynamic elements, entirely new problems suddenly appeared. Just getting off the starting ramp became a challenge all its own. But afterwards, Walter Röhrl could let all his ingenious driving artistry unfold across the magnificent Tuscan landscape. The sound, the look, and Röhrl's driving style went straight to fans' hearts.
Da ist der Walter in sich natürlich schon überirdisch gewesen. Also diesen Apparat mit all seinen Unzulänglichkeiten, da nicht nur am Asphalt, sondern auch am Schotter so am Limit zu bewegen, ich glaube, da gibt es nicht viele, die das kennen.
Der Fahrer musste viel mehr arbeiten und kämpfen. Das Auto war sicher alles andere als einfach zu bewegen. Und das hat man natürlich auch von außen gesehen. Es wurde querer gefahren, ein Auto ist mal ausgebrochen. Heute würden sie sich totlachen über die Dämpfer, mit denen wir damals gefahren waren.
These wonderful rally days ended with Walter Röhrl and Christian Geisdorfer as the winners in San Remo. Though it was a clear victory, it would remain the only victory for the Audi S1. But even so, the limits of what could be done had been raised yet again.
Du hast die Erfahrung, du hast ein Gefühl für Geschwindigkeit und du hast ein Gefühl für den Radius der Kurve. Und dann schätzt du ein, wie schnell das geht. Und plötzlich merkst du beim Fahren, ja, da war ja noch sehr viel Reserve. Also anscheinend ist jetzt der Grip besser wie vorher. Und so tastest dich dann langsam an dieses Anpressdruck heran und weißt, okay, jetzt kann ich überall nur ein Schipperl drauflegen. Es geht immer noch ein bisschen schneller und das macht immer noch nicht diesen hier. Ne? Und so hat man sich da rangetastet. Und da war sicherlich meine Rennerfahrung ein großer Vorteil.
Man hat sich dann adaptiert und das aufgenommen und dann war auch der erste Schock weg von dieser Mega-Leistung, die dieser Motor hatte. Und Das wurde dann eigentlich nur noch einmal getoppt, das war dann durch das PDK, wo es also dann fast unmöglich wurde vorzulesen, weil ja der Kraftschluss gefehlt hat und man nicht mehr wusste, in welchem Gang ist man jetzt eigentlich und welche Geschwindigkeit fährt man.
Ja, der Christian hat sich nicht verstempelt, der hat sich nicht verlesen, der ist nicht aus dem Gebietbuch gekommen.
Wie lange kann ich mir Zeit lassen, um also zu schnaufen, um zu betonen? Oder muss das gehen, tak, 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 tak? Ja?
50 rechts minus innen, Aufgabe rechts voll innen, 80, links minus, 40, Nachgruppe mittelrechts plus plus innen, 80, Abgruppe rechts minus eng, sofort mittellinks plus, 90, rechts minus innen, 60, mittellinks, Nachgruppe sofort mittelrechts plus ran, 70, rechts minus innen, Aufgruppe sofort links voll, 50, mittelrechts plus innen, sofort links voll, sofort Gruppe voll, 70, Achtung mittellinks plus 40, mittelrechts plus innen, 50, Aufgruppe rechts voll, 50, mittelrechts plus innen, 50, Gruppe voll, sofort links minus, Achtung noch Zug nach innen, sofort mittelrechts plus plus, 50, Aufgruppe links, 80, Achtung mittellinks plus innen, 50, Nachgruppe mittelrechts plus innen, sofort mittellinks plus innen, 50, rechts, sofort links, 60, Achtung, Nachgruppe rechts, minus innen, 70, links, innen.
The season finale in Great Britain, with textbook November weather.
It was raining, foggy and mud, and no practice that time. And we drove day and night.
But at that time it was blind rally. And for the Group B cars it wasn't really a pleasure to drive in the fog and ice and things in the Kill the Forest example with those cars in the night.
A lot of snow and no spikes and 500 horsepower is quite exciting. Yeah.
In late 1985, Group B really started to pick up steam. For the first time, nearly all of the interested manufacturers were introducing new takes on the Group B theme. Lancia had the impressive Delta S4. Ford showed its RS200, though it would only join the fray in 1986 in Sweden. Austin Rover presented its Metro 6R4, a Williams Formula One development with a magnificent naturally aspirated six-cylinder engine. And of course, there was also the more conventional crowd with Toyota, Mazda, Nissan and Opel. The new cars drew massive crowds which by 1985 were taking on marathon-like dimensions.
It was the very longest RAC that's ever been put on. And of course in those days, no pace notes, no route notes, it was all off a ordnance survey map.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit ice there, but it wasn't the first RAC.
The 1985 RAC Rally is widely viewed as one of the toughest rallies of all time, at least in terms of times driven. This event sent drivers speeding through England, Wales and Scotland for 5 days to cover 3,530 kilometres together, with 65 special stages totalling 855 kilometres. The starting pistol was fired on Sunday morning in Nottingham, with the first serious break to sleep only 36 hours later. Then another 28 hours almost constantly at the wheel, followed by a final 19-hour run to the finish line. All that with the new Group B weapons, but without studded tyres, on ice, in snow, by night and through the fog. And of course, without long breaks for a smoke. Quite vexing, as Neil Wilson, Henry Toivonen's co-driver, could tell us.
Henry smoked occasionally, and I don't think it was very good for his image that he should be seen smoking. Anyway, he'd get me to light him a cigarette now and again, but he always gave them to me to throw out of the little side window. No problem. And there was just a side window in the Lancia. Chucked the cigarette end out. And then when we came to a service area, the big air scoops at the back of the Lancia, there were cigarette ends caught in it. And the Lancia mechanics used to take the cigarette ends out the air scoops and sort of admonish me for smoking. And I'd look at Henry and Henry'd say, it's not good.
It was tough going at first in the new cars, but apart from a brief Micola Audi intermezzo, the new Lancia Delta S4 was firmly in charge right from the start.
We turned the car over in the ice in Scotland, but the spectators were there immediately, put it back on its wheel, and we were gone.
The mystical British forests left clearly visible traces on Toivonen's Lancia. For long stretches, Marco Alin ruled. Only 10 special stages before the end did Henry Toivonen take the lead. For the new Delta S4's premiere, Lancia scored a double success. Henry Toivonen, with his co-driver Neil Wilson, prevailed, with Marco Alin close behind.
When we were at the end of the RAC Rally, and Henry and I were standing on the car, celebrating, he said to me, I so needed this win. It was so important to my career. And I said to him, I think it'll be easy from now on for you.
Sure, Group B cars were hard to tame beasts that often resisted being forced into the curves. And there were just a handful of drivers who were able to push these machines to the limits, as their creators had intended. But that was exactly what rally fans wanted to see. The world's best drivers of that era dealing virtuosically with their vehicles' inadequacies. But even so, the word monster, so overused by today's media, would be an exaggeration for these cars. In Sweden, after just a few kilometers, the nose-heavy Quattros lost their studs on the hard road surface.
The worst thing was in medium tight corner really when should try to drive and the car just wanted to go straight.
Dancing across the ice with little or no traction and 400 horsepower was a tour de force indeed. But greeting friends by the wayside was one thing at least that the artists in the cockpit still found time to do. Blunders did occur, of course, but every period of rallying history has had its blunders. In the extreme Group B, however, the technical freedoms involved sometimes made such blunders far more dramatic.
die Geschwindigkeit war schon ein Faktor, der das ausgeübt hat. Aber du kannst nicht sagen, dass es also ganz was Spezifisches ist. Also die Autos selber waren in Ordnung, bloß halt mit zunehmender Geschwindigkeit wird es halt alles ein bisschen problematischer. Ne?
Maybe we are only very bad luck with Attilio and Toivonen and Cresto. Possibly, yeah, very bad luck. Yeah, but anyway, power is maximum. You have in rally less than 1,000 kilo, and you have in minimum 550, 600 to 750 horsepower. That's quite a lot. Yes. But nice.
If you go backwards to 50s or 60s, I mean, the guys without seatbelts and up there with the big steering and things, I mean, I think that was even more dangerous than it was that time. If you couldn't drive the cars, then you were in the wrong place. You should go then to do football or bicycle or whatever.
my car, 84, my very first, when I fell down, in Corsica, and my helmet flew off my head during the accident. Yes, following the car, and car caught fire immediately.
Those days, it could have happened with any car really, because the safety was not priority number one at the moment, because they was all developed the cars and tried to go faster.
The most extreme Group B year yet runs its course.
Finally, the car was 1,200 kilos and 550 horsepower, so it was very fast car, but fun to drive.
Audi haben wir auf 212 oder was übersetzt gewesen, und da bist du natürlich schon in vielen Bereichen bist du mal am Begrenzer gekommen gewesen. Du, solange du nicht am Tacho schaust, weißt du das als Fahrer gar nicht. Verstehst du, das merkst du gar nicht.
At the Monte Carlo Rally, Citroën steps into the ring with its BX4TC, making it the 6th big-name automaker to get involved. And with that, the stage is set for a fantastic Group B season.
Dieser Motor da vorne drin war immer noch ein bisschen ein Handicap. Ja. Aber trotzdem, das Auto war in Ordnung, und wir hätten damals auch, ohne diese zwei Reifenschäden, die ich gehabt habe, hätte man jederzeit noch mal gewinnen können gegen den Henry.
For 20 years after his father Pauli, Henry Toivonen also won the Monte Carlo Rally for Lancia. Evidently, the Delta S4 was tailor-made for his driving style, and it really did look like it was going to be Henry's year. In Sweden, Ford stirred things up with its RS 200 and the great Stig Blomqvist, who had left Audi. Juha Kankkunen had transferred from Toyota to Peugeot. His switch to an all-wheel drive car was effortless.
I have been driving afterwards Audi and also S4, Lancia and things, but I still keep the Peugeot, especially on the small roads. For me it was most easiest to drive and very well balanced car and light and nice to go.
The 1986 Portugal Rally begins. Once again, the spectators crowd chaotically alongside the course as the 500 horsepower rockets speed by. Some of the less sane ones even try to touch the cars as they pass. Later on at Peugeot, the service team makes the gruesome discovery of 2 torn-off fingers in the engine compartment of one of their cars.
The fingers were there was air intake behind the doors, and they were quite sharp to take the air into the coolers, into the engine, and we were trying to stay in the middle of the road. I never went off there or anything, but they were just trying to touch the cars, and that was it.
But the show around Lisbon continues unflaggingly until Portuguese driver Joaquim Santos comes along. Several spectators are killed, with numerous others injured. All the teams are horrified and a bit unsure of how to proceed. Rally head Cesare doesn't understand all the commotion. He wants the race to continue normally. But the professional drivers hold a spontaneous conference and announce their unanimous decision to break off the race, despite some of their teams threatening them with serious consequences.
Selbst für uns, die abgebrüht waren, was Zuschauer anbelangt, war da irgendwann mal die Grenze erreicht. Also das kann nicht sein, wenn ich da, selbst auf der Lago Azul, wenn ich da runterfahre und da stehen Menschen, Tausende von Menschen, wenn da irgendwas am Auto nicht funktioniert, fährst du in die Menschen rein mit 150, das alles, da hast du gesagt, das kann nicht. Und nachdem wir die Verantwortung nicht mehr tragen, dann musst du was unternehmen. Und nicht dieser Unfall, wahrscheinlich wäre keiner so mutig gewesen, aus freien Entscheidung, das zu sagen, ich fahre nicht.
I am sure that if I had been there, they would have started. But that was the beginning of the climate that was growing around Group B, that Group B cars were dangerous. And of course, that was the first big stone that started rolling against this category.
Audi reacts instantly by announcing its immediate withdrawal from Group B on account of insufficient spectator safety. All the other teams, however, will meet again soon in Corsica. Toivonen is now driving at the peak of his ability in a car that not only matches his talents, but also perfectly complements them. And in Corsica, he's in a class all by himself. Nobody can hold a candle to him. By the break in Corte, Toivonen has nearly 3 minutes on Bruno Zabi in his Peugeot, and he's also won 12 of 17 special stages. The Delta S4 has begun to virtually fly in the hands of the Finnish driver, and the masses love him for it. His teammates Biession and Helene are behind 3 and nearly 9 minutes respectively. In this break, Henry feels a bit out of sorts and retreats to his camper for a brief rest. But easing off for a bit after the break was definitely not an option. Not for a Finn in fighting mode. Besides which, so-called slow driving can actually lead to disastrous errors. Full concentration. The film for the coming precarious tightrope walk is already playing in Toivonen's head. On Thursday, May the 1st, 1986, Henri Toivonen and his co-driver Sergio Cristo start into their final special stage. About 5 kilometers in, their Lancia leaves the road on a curve to the left, plunging over an embankment. As the first spark to fly hits the leaking fuel, causing an instant blaze that incinerates the car and its occupants. Horrified paralysis overcomes not just the Lancia team, but the entire rally. A difficult and very sad day for the Toivonen family and for the entire sport. Miession's and Helene's cars are immediately withdrawn from the event. The Delta S4's charred frame can still be seen today on YouTube.
There was no any braking marks, nothing. Just flat out like I would drive that one corner before that speed.
Because, you know, like Henry, he burned in the car and, you know, he was sitting on the fuel, you know, so.
Von 0 auf 160 auf Schotter in 6,9 Sekunden. Das heißt, du fährst aus der Kehre raus, da fährst immer 50 oder 60. Hast schon mal Geschwindigkeit drauf. Das heißt, in 3 Sekunden oder 4 Sekunden fährst du 150. Du kannst ein Gruppe B-Auto mit 550 PS, wenn du glaubst, du kannst nach den Ansagen des Beifahrers fahren, wenn du nicht weißt, wo es hingeht. Das kann nicht gehen. Die Linie kann nicht perfekt sein, es wird eine Holzhackerei.
Back then, rallying was more popular than Formula One, and some people were quite eager to see the spectacular Group B bite the dust. So before they had left Corsica, FIA President Ballastra announced that Group B would shut down after the season's conclusion.
But of course the emotion of the accident of Toivonen and Cristo was so strong that the following decision were made under this pressure, and of course it was, as I said, a very political decision. That's it.
As I said, it was not for me the right decision. Yeah. So it was probably an excuse. That's why at the time we sued FIA for this decision.
The 86 season continued full steam, with all who remained now with the images of dead friends and colleagues in their heads. Following Audi's withdrawal, a French-Italian match developed that left no one cold. Peugeot, with its slightly more mature design than the Lancia Delta S4, had a slight advantage. The Italians were still quite busy teaching the S4 its manners. In other words, getting the car's sophisticated components to work well in concert. Victory for Kankunen and Peugeot at the Acropolis Rally. The next test of strength takes place on the gorgeous gravel roads of New Zealand. This time around, dust is hardly a factor, so when looking at the stopwatches, there's hardly any room for interpretation. Following an accident and extensive repairs, Timo Salonen loses any chance he might have had. So Juha Kankkunen has to take over, and after 300 special stage kilometres, he's leading along with Marco Alén. Their times are matched down to the second. Lancia tries to prevent Marco having to hit the course first again, but in vain. This leaves the Finn to enjoy the ultimate nightmare of any rally driver.
You know, one pickup is coming opposite way. Slowly corner, I go 200 meters, but I am, you know, that's coming downhill, I coming uphill. And after, you know, I am too much concentrate, and I see in last minutes, and GP is taking completely stop. It's no name. How dangerous? No name, absolutely.
Miraculously, this bit of horror took place immediately after a slow curve, so rallying narrowly escaped its next catastrophe. But from this point onward, there was no catching up to Kankkunen's Peugeot. Marco Alén, appalled and distraught, was no match for Peugeot's two-man team. The winner in Auckland once again, Juha Kankkunen, now with an excellent chance at the World Championship title.
Probably the turnaround with the fight against Markku was when I managed to win Greece, because I rolled the car on the test before it, and Todt came from the Paris with the private plane with the new roof, and they changed the roof, and I won the rally. And then we went to New Zealand, I think it was next one, and I won that as well, so I won 2 on the row. Then I was started to think about that, okay, there is a chance if you stay all right to fight to win the World Championship title.
In terms of both action and speed, the season highlight is once again Finland. 1986 took place with the most powerful Group B machines yet, but they were only the prelude to the even wilder times and higher speeds that could have been.
They make by radar, by police radar in 1000 Lakes Rally in Finland, in Ouninpohja. At the end of long bumpy straight, I had 207 km/h speed on gravel.
Marco Alén drives the best time in 27 of the event's 48 special stages, well ahead. But then he flips over and loses all hopes of winning. So the Peugeot team, now reinforced by Stig Blomqvist, can celebrate another double victory and a greatly improved chance at the Constructors' title. The San Remo Rally, the festival of Italian emotions and an annual highlight. Action and speed aren't to be sneezed at here either, and the beautiful Tuscan backdrop makes it all an incomparable work of art. At this wonderful, high-performing San Remo Rally, Marco Alén is a class unto himself, his driving style drawing storms of approval from the Tifosi. Unfortunately, it all got dragged down by a very unappetizing, very Italian and very political intermezzo. The disqualification of all remaining Peugeots before the final night, on account of supposedly illegal parts added to the car's underbodies. This allowed Lancia to celebrate a triple victory, but this fantastic rally's results were ultimately voided after Peugeot's successful appeal to the FIA. This only happened after the season had ended, however, further underlining the inglorious nature of Group B's demise. The RAC Rally comes across like most of the season. Shortly before Group B's final event, the Delta S4 had matured into a very harmonious car, and Alain took advantage of these qualities in some fantastic duelling against Peugeot. But in an electrifying battle for seconds with Timo Salonen, the wrong choice of tyres once again costs him his yearned-for victory over Peugeot in the last two special stages. Lancia doesn't give up, however, instead giving Marco a new and even more powerful engine for the final Group B rally. Something like the muscle car of the future.
Our latest Group B engine is coming our last rally in Olympus, 86 in December, and that's a little bit too late, but beautiful remembering, you know, this engine.
Marco won in the USA and enjoyed a brief reign as world champion.
I am only maybe motorsport person who is in 10 days in world champion after you lost everything, but still in life.
The true and final Group B world champion was Juha Kakkonen, after Peugeot's San Remo disqualification was reversed. And as far as the World Rally Championships were concerned, that was it for Group B.
Soon it would have gone up to 1,000 horsepower, and that's in the forest start to be. Then you get troubles with the transmission and tires, and you know, you just burn everything.
30 years after its last event, Group B is more popular than ever. Because of its abrupt end and the FIA's radical decision in favour of the close-to-production Group A class, the new FIA class of Group S, which was already completely planned out, never materialised. Several of the cars from back then were seen at the Eiffel Rally in 2016, where the 30-year anniversary of the final Group B rally was commemorated. Audi tradition even took its Group S car out of the museum and got it roadworthy, giving fans in the Eiffel an approximate idea of what could have been the future of rallying after 1986. The design would have given a bit of extra refinement for the occasion, they said. The man behind the wheel of this Audi prototype was, of course, none other than Walter Röhrl. Even after Group B's demise, America's Pikes Peak provided a wonderful playground for the now unemployed Group B rockets.
Whether I was in a World Championship, whether I was in a Paris-Dakar, or whether I was in a Pikes Peak. Well, look at the film Pikes Peak. I mean, that also proves what Group B was like, because that is part of the Group B period.
Aber da ist einmal eine Rechtskehre, da kommst du ziemlich schnell an, geht so leicht über die Kuppe drüber und dann kommt diese Kehre rechts und du da geradeaus fährst bis 1800 Meter tiefer.
I was struggling against Walter Röhrl, and really struggling. I mean, it's a lot slower all the time. And I thought that, well, I have some brain damage, because that was the first test after my accident, 85. And then suddenly in a qualifying, mechanics worked all night. There's no drawings, nothing was tested. He just thought, let's put the second spoiler on top of the other spoiler. And straight into qualifying. And after two corners, I felt the car is transformed. And like a same kind of feeling like in Monte Carlo earlier. Wow, confidence, I can do. I was flying. And instead of, on 10 kilometers, instead of being 4 seconds slower than Walter, I was 4 seconds faster. I had the tears in my eyes at the end of qualifying. I said, yes. And I said, oh, old Ari's back.
Aber wir hatten beim Pikes Peak einen Motor dabei mit so 750 PS. Aber den konnte man die Kraft nicht mehr dosieren. Das war entweder nix oder 750 PS.
Audi and Peugeot entered the race to the clouds with even higher-powered Group B models. Both Walter Röhrl's hill climb of 1987 and the one by Ari Vatanen the next year served to cement these Group B speed machines' legendary status. Röhrl's record time of 1987 was beaten just 1 year later by Ari Vatanen in a Peugeot 405. With 800 horsepower, it was rumored.
Toll, dass ich die Zeit mitgemacht habe, weil es war irgendetwas Verrücktes, aber wie halt alles im Leben, je verrückter, umso toller ist es, gell?
This very fitting final statement by Walter Röhrl is from the Audi film of 1985. And with this in mind, let's take one more look at the heroes of Group B, those still among us, and those who have departed.
What was the problem that you rolled the car?
Well, you know, it's this bloody Teufel and didn't want to drive at all, so I had to drive and read the road book and take the times and everything, and it was too much work. I only have 3 hands, so I can't do everything.
Now, my brother is living more than in 20 years because everybody knows him now and there are so many fans. Last year I was here driving in Rally Legend and there was a 14-year-old boy came to me and said that he's the biggest fan of my brother. And he was 14 years old and it's 30 years that my brother was gone.